Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Furiously Curious Show. I know it's been a while, but I'm excited to say I'm going to be uploading again. So today is a conversation with a buddy of mine, Mark Van Oort. We recorded this last November. Super interesting conversation on Bitcoin, or at least I thought so. So hope you enjoyed as well. And more content coming soon.
Mark, you are here because we're going to talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You just asked me how I got into Bitcoin. I got into Bitcoin in, I think it was 2017.
Mm-hmm.
There was a customer in South Africa that we had that got into it.
Yeah.
And he told me to buy some. And I think it was in January of 2017. Told me to buy some, and I bought some in September. And I took the rush of the 2017 rush.
December, October, because it peaked at December, I think.
Yeah,
So
that's
it
right,
went from like, I think $2,000-$3,000 to $20,000 in like 3 months, I guess.
Yeah, I'm still not rich, guys. But anyways, yeah, I wanted to have you on the podcast to talk about Bitcoin. It's a big topic, and it's kind of comes and goes in the news, and a lot of people still don't know what it is and what it's about. And you put on some Bitcoin, I guess, get-togethers a couple times, answer questions for people. So I thought be fun to have you on and to talk about it. And there's also a whole big Christian perspective on Bitcoin and money, which I think a lot of people don't realize, because most people think Bitcoin is just
money
or just a scam or different things. So, but how'd you get into it?
So I think it was like 2013. I think it was at like $3, and we used to play some like video games back in the day, and you would buy currency, and of course we weren't allowed to use our parents' credit cards, so we were like, we could use Bitcoin to buy it and use the Bitcoin, and there's no backing it or anything. Like, you could just send it, and you don't need like credentials or anything like a bank account. So we got some, and I was like buying digital currencies with the digital currency. It was just video game currency. So nowadays you have like Fortnite V-Bucks or anything like digital currencies.
So you earned money in the video game, and with that money you bought Bitcoin?
Yeah, or vice versa. You would want more money, so instead of like working in the video game to get ahead, you would just be like, you'd purchase it with it. So yeah, I bought it back in the day. So I think, I don't know, that was 2013. So and
so your motivation at the time was just for the video game.
Yeah, it wasn't like really knowing anything about it. It was just, okay, this is how you do it. So it was like, and then there was also nothing about it back in the day. So if you had to figure everything out yourself, and it was like, like there's literally nothing. You couldn't Google it. It wasn't like very little talk forums about it to figure it out. So you had to send like money. If you did, you had to send like a check to like Japan was the only way to get it. It was like, it was a place called, again, Exchange to Japan was the only way to get it. So like you're just sending money through the mail to even get it. It was really hard to get Bitcoin. It was not.
Wait, so how did you get it?
So like I had my own bank account, but I didn't have any cards on it, but I could still write checks. So I could write a check. I'd be like, $10,000 or $1,000 or something, or 30. I think it was like, maybe $100. You would send it in the mail, and it would go all the way to Japan. I can't think of the exchange off the top of my head, but it ultimately collapsed too as well. And so people who had their Bitcoins in there lost it, so it was really hard to get Bitcoin. Like nobody had it. There was no exchanges around. Like there was no bank places to exchange it. Like now there's ATMs in, like the Popcom Esso here is a Bitcoin ATM, right? Yeah. So like they're all over the place now. But back in the day, there was nothing. So that's the way to get to it. Or you had to have somebody who later I found somebody who had Bitcoin, and then they would sell it to me for like cash in Canada now. Okay, this is before that. So yeah, I think it was at like, $3, and then whatever, I seen it jumped up to like $30, and I'm like, whoa, as a kid, I was like, whoa, dude, I'm rich. So like, whatever, I bought a truck and this and that, like nothing crazy. And then kind of forgot about it and didn't deal with it. And then until it was like, I think 2015 or 2016.
Well, so this, Mike, a little bit closer to your face.
So like 2015, 2016, it was like, I don't know, all of a sudden like I heard it in the news. I'm like, it's jumped up to like, $300-$400. And I'm like, whoa, was that 30, right? And then kind of like, then I started like, okay, I have some still. Let's look into it. So I started looking, I'm like, what is it now? And learning about it. And that's kind of like when I started going on the rabbit hole. And that's just like, because once you start learning about like what is money and all that stuff, it's like, what is Bitcoin? Okay, There's so much to learn.
Yeah. Okay, so that's how you got into it. That's the brief story how you got into it. So for most people, though, they have no idea what Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
So they know it's something to do with crypto. But before we define what crypto is or what Bitcoin is, you sent me some notes beforehand and kind of like how we can talk through this topic. And so you said your first thing you want to talk about is what is money? Because you think you need to define that first before you can really talk about Bitcoin.
So we'll just start off like, what do you think money is?
An exchange, something you use to exchange goods for services.
Yeah. So like a lot of people don't actually think like, what is money? We just use it every day, but nobody even talks about it. It's like when somebody asks you what your wage is, nobody wants to talk about it. It's like a thing that like you just don't talk about money, but like we should, because what is money? If it's the tool you use most every day, like money is a tool to exchange your value and time. So if you work for an hour and you want to exchange that time for something else in the future, you need to like hold it into something. So back in the day, there used to be like, oh, let's hold it in bananas or something, or like let's hold it in cows, because you can't just make cows out of thin air. You got to like grow the cow, you got to hold it. Same thing with bananas. You need to put the effort and energy in. But then you realize, oh, hey, bananas actually are good, because if I've put all my money in bananas, they rot, right? So they don't last. They have a time period.
Yeah.
And then they killed so I think in South Africa and Africa, they started using beads. So like beads are really rare, and they would use that as a form of currency. But the problem was, so like it was great, but there's all these properties of money. You could also, people from Europe could just create beads out of like in industrial and mass produce them. And same thing in America. They would bring these beads to Africa, and now they would like inflate the currency, their bead currencies, and exchange these beads for them. And they thought they were getting rich, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I'll take 100 beads and I'll sell my kid," because back in the day, that's how the slave trade started. Was they thought they were getting rich with these beads because they're getting tons of beads and they were like, "Oh, selling their family members and this and that for slaves," and all of a sudden they realized that everybody had the same amount and they're worthless now. So then they moved kind of over the years, money has evolved. Then it went to like rye stones on the islands.
So what evolved over the years was not how money is used, but what was used.
Yeah, the properties of what was used. The best properties held up time. So we got to like gold. You just can't make gold out of thin air. So they had gold coins. So you couldn't just go around the world and you could obviously find better deposits of it, but you can't just, it's harder to create. So they found that that's a better form of money. So then they used like silver, and then they went to gold, and it's a better form of money. So you can't just like melt it down. You can't have additives to it. So people realized the properties of gold were way better, and they started using it instead. The only thing with gold is later on in our time was like gold is heavy and hard to move. So that's where it was the efficiency of like our technology now. That's why we kind of went away from a gold standard in 1971 was, well, we got to store it here, but instead of moving it back and forth, it's super expensive. So it's useless. Like we don't want to be carrying a gold bar with us when we're going to buy a vehicle, or like coins everywhere, because it's heavy and it's easy to seize. So like, we moved off to it and then put it in banks, and we're going to trust the banks that they have this gold. But when they went off the gold standard completely, there was nothing backing it. So
hold up there. So I think I've tracked you so far. So they used to use gold, and then it said, okay, gold's too heavy. It doesn't work to move around. So let's just say we're going to have, for every gold bar, we're going to have, I don't know, $1,000 or $100,000.
Yeah.
And that was like basically to in replace of gold, because it was easier to move around.
Yeah, so you could go take that $1,000 bill and go back and like, I want $1,000 of or $1,000 worth of gold, and it would be 1-to-1. Well, the problem is the government started printing more of these, like same thing we have it now. It's fiat money. So that's just how fiat was created, was like printing more of these money compared to things. So they had every 2-to-1. So then if everybody redeemed 50% of what their gold was, all the gold would be taken, and the other 50% wouldn't get it. So that's when
they started printing
too much.
Okay, yeah.
So not having enough gold.
And that happened in 1971?
Yeah. Well, like before that already, that's 1971 was when Nixon, the States, took it off the gold standard, because it became such a problem where like we have to devalue something, devalue the coupons we gave, which we call money nowadays. And then they just were like, we're not even going to back it anymore. We're just going to print the money, and it's not backed by gold anymore.
And when that happened in 1971, what was the response? Do you know?
Anybody who had gold, like it was like they also confiscated people's gold and stuff like that. So like I think the U.S. dollar, like technically it's a default. They're defaulting on their dollar, and so the dollar dropped. So if you, let's say, had a gold bar, or you had, let's say, $1,000 bill, all of a sudden, if it devalued by 50%, whatever you're holding in that, denomination of that money, all of a sudden it's worth 50% less. So the next day moving forward, when they devalued it, was like, if you had the gold bar, you could buy $1,000 worth of something, and then you kept on going, and you're like, oh, and the next day you had that your bill, and you can only buy half of what the gold bar could go, right? So they just devalued the dollar.
So today is gold just, I mean, it's kind of a little bit off topic, but is gold just now another commodity like silver, and it's actually not at all attached to money at all?
Well, you can get gold coins, and people, like a lot of old people still are like, oh, we're going to buy gold because they know it's being printed. And so gold has risen since 1971. Gold has gone from, I think it's like 2,000 American, and at that point it was like $30 American.
Okay.
So the gold has kept up and not devalued against the dollar because
But the dollar has, because since 1971, like what you could buy for $1 in 1971 is not at all what you can buy for $1 today.
Yeah, well, just look back in the day. You could buy like a Big Mac for $1, or you could buy a bubble gum for $0.01. Now you can't even buy probably a piece of gum for $1, right? Like you could just see how the money is.
So you're saying that the problem with money today is kind of the same as like what you said about the beads in Africa, is that there's like, because they're printing so many beads.
There's no restriction to printing it. There's no so that's what we call inflation nowadays.
And what's the motivation of governments to print it? Just so they can falsely prop up the economy?
Well, not even falsely prop up the economy. It's a lot of mal-incentives. So like you don't need to go to your taxpayers. You could just print it to fund something.
Yeah.
Like we're going to get this into later, I think, a lot. Like, so it's kind of, we just stick basically on it is like, they don't need to go something. It's easy. So like if you need money, you need to either have austerity by like cutting back stuff. You need to print money, either that or borrow money, or you need to tax it. So if you don't want to, so 3 of them are not popular, right? So what's the easiest one? Printing money, nobody knows, nobody cares. It gets out of hand really quickly, and we see that. I think in the last, couple months, the U.S. has borrowed $3 trillion in the last 3 months. Like $3 trillion in the last 3 months. So you can see how quickly and rapid it's like a hockey stick at first. So same with like the Trudeau government. They borrowed $600 billion in the last 2 years. So our money supply has increased 30% in the last 2.5 years. So he's printed more money, and they've printed more money in the last 2 years than they have in the creation of the entire government of Canada ever.
So the total amount of, like, let's say compared to beads, just for there used to be 100 beads, total supply used to be 100 total Canadian dollars, and now there's 30% more.
Yeah, so there's 130.
130. So everyone's money devalued by 30%.
And we can see that. You're just like, oh, some prices are jumping up, but it's kind of like everything is, it's like an elastic band. You kind of don't know things are at. Like you want a measuring tape that wants to be true. So like we were kind of like talking about money, because we're probably going to talk about this later again. Like money, people are realizing that like what is money, and are kind of like, oh, it's not holding value. I need to put it into something else. So that's like people need to learn, just starting off, like what is money? And it's a tool to trade value. So what do you want the best tool? And then that's like, okay, then what is Bitcoin?
Okay, so I understand. Okay, and so that brings us to to Bitcoin. And so your argument is that Bitcoin is a better tool to store a value than the current way, specifically because there's only a specific amount of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get to the specific amount of Bitcoin and why that's different than the other cryptocurrencies out there, what is crypto? What is the cryptocurrency like?
Yeah, so like, well, I mean, let's get this right. So first of all, there's Bitcoin and then there's crypto. So crypto is a lot of different other things.
They're different?
They're different completely. So there's just Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and crypto.
So Bitcoin isn't a type of crypto?
Well, I mean, it's cryptographically, but most people are like, no, Bitcoin is a whole separate thing. And when you classify as crypto, it's usually meaning about a lot of other things that are, they are not honest things, or companies or other things, or they're meme coins, or like me and you can go create one right now. Like they're super easy to do, because like, and that has a lot of malincentives, because there is no regulations with crypto. I mean, there is a lot now, but a lot of people have been burnt twice. But
okay,
Bitcoin's
so what? Okay, so what? Maybe explain what crypto is and what Bitcoin is.
So let's start with Bitcoin. So it's like Bitcoin. You need, like, just to get into Bitcoin and understand it, you need to know like computer technology, math. Like you need money to kind of understand what it is. So it is very hard to understand when you know nothing about it, or even let alone technology. But Bitcoin is pretty much like a software that everybody runs. It's like the 10 Commandments. There's rules, and everybody runs the same rules and the same software. It's kind of like the internet. So it's like, and a ledger that we all keep together. So it's like if I send Bitcoin from me to you, it's just a ledger with names and addresses on it, and it equals.
So maybe before we get there, back up. How did Bitcoin get started? Like, how did this whole thing came to be? Because it's still, I mean, there's some of the terminology, I kind of know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but like, think of someone that like has no idea.
Yeah.
So like, I know things started 2009. There was a guy
So
named,
Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't even know if it's a group or one person or multiple people. We have no idea. He had this anonymous mailing list. He sent it out. He used a bunch of different ideas from other people.
he sent what out?
So he sent out like it's a blog. So he's sending out blog posts. So it's like, just think of like Facebook, and he's updating his Facebook, but it's like a super techie form, which so nobody really had access to. That's how it started. So he was like, I have this idea. He brought a different couple of ideas from over like the last 10 years together, like hashing different things. And then he created called the Bitcoin white paper. So it's pretty much like the software and the idea and the equation behind Bitcoin. So he posted
He wrote like basically a manifesto of like,
yes, what is money, what is Bitcoin,
what is money, okay,
and how to run it.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So, and it's everybody should read it. I mean, it's surprising how people don't, because it is kind of simpler. There is some stuff. I think it's only 9 pages. It's like nothing. So if you can just skim through it, and it'll just like, it's pretty like, you're kind of like, oh, if you don't have an idea, it's only like, I think it's 9 pages. So he wrote that, and then that's when like.
And in summary, what did he write? He basically said, okay, the current monetary system doesn't work, I'm assuming, and he said, so how does this work? It's like I know it goes over computers.
So it's kind of not really why, like through his posts he tells why he does it, but like the Bitcoin white paper explains just what Bitcoin is and how it works.
Okay.
So it's the idea, the manifesto of Bitcoin, like electronic peer-to-peer cash system without any intermediary.
Electronic peer-to-peer cash system. Okay.
So it's like, he's one that created a bearer asset so we were talking about gold. When you hold gold, you hold it and you own it. When you hold your money in your bank account, the bank's holding it for you. So when you go to send somebody, you have to go to the bank, and the bank's got to send it to somebody else. What a peer-to-peer means, I can send it straight from me to you. And it's like giving a bar gold. So it's peer-to-peer. There's nobody in between.
Okay.
So that's what that is.
Okay. So that's the first step. So he set up an electronic money system that's peer-to-peer.
And then he, so WikiLeaks kind of blew up and was trying to use Bitcoin because they got taken off of credit cards because they released a bunch of stuff from the U.S. Army, and then they kind of got, the U.S. Army and FBI went after them. So they started using Bitcoin. He's seen that and was like, this is going too big, like within a couple of years.
Okay, but before we get there, is this how to explain it?
Like, this is like who Satoshi Nakamoto is. So like he wrote all this stuff. He posted this paper. When that happened, he just went AWOL. So that means he stopped everything, deleted everything, and that's why we don't know who it is or what it is. If it's a group of people or nothing, and that's kind of like.
But how it's designed is that it can't be hacked, right? Or it can't be.
Yeah, so it's like a bunch of rules. Like it's like saying here's the chess game. So it's the rules of chess, and it's like you're the one that created chess. You and you write all the rules down, and then you give it to somebody. Now you have all the rules of chess, and you can play chess. If you change it, it's not chess anymore. So like it's just a bunch of rules that everybody runs, and everybody's like all the software on your computers and nodes run the same set of rules.
And you can't engage with the software unless you're following those rules.
Yeah, like unless you're running a Bitcoin node. Yes, if you change the rules and you're like, I don't want it to be 21 million cap anymore. I want it to be whatever. That's not Bitcoin anymore. Just like when chess.
And so then the system won't let you.
Yeah. So just like chess, if you're like, oh, I want to play chess with you, and you're like, oh, yeah, but the pawns are like queens, and then you're like, that's not chess. So you're not playing chess anymore. It's a different variation. Okay. And that's what also people do is they change Bitcoin, and they can make their own coins, and then they can change whatever they want, and it's decentralized.
And that's the crap coin.
Yeah, that stuff like, and then you can use that and say, oh, it's better than Bitcoin, and then it gets in value, and then people dump on you, and then it's not.
So he created Bitcoin, and so he said peer-to-peer electronic money system.
Yeah.
And so he made, how he wrote it is what? Like, so I know part of it he made, part of the writing is that there's 22 million of them.
21 million coins. There's
21
million coins. There's like every 10 minutes there's a block being mined. So just imagine like miners mining for gold. So there's 21 million coins, but the supply isn't all mined. And so that's
what does that mean, mined? Like,
so like just like so let's say you have a bunch of gold in the world, but there's also gold in the ground that's not mined yet. Nobody has it. So people are going to look for and get it. So there's not 21 million Bitcoin released yet. So they're all there and all accounted for, but like the miners and the computer stuff to mine for them. So there's 21 million. Right now, I think there's 19 million that people own. So there's only 2 million left. And the next, I think it's like 200 years. So every 4 years, the supply gets cut in half until we reach the 21 million coins.
how would it go up in supply if it's getting cut in half?
So 21 million are out there, but they're like people own 19 million of them. There's 2 million that are still need to be mined. But to get released, they get released every 10 minutes by like crazy computers with energy, which is a whole other side of it. We can talk about it. Like I don't even think we should get into that today. Miners, which is like another 4-hour conversation. But quickly, miners are the ones doing the computing power with big numbers to guess a number to keep the Bitcoin network safe. They get rewarded with Bitcoin every 10 minutes. So there's new Bitcoin.
But you said, you back up to the first thing. You said every 4 years that supply gets cut in half?
Yeah, so right now...
So let's go to 22 million to...
because of the issuance supply. Sorry, I should clear that. Issuance supply. So right now there's 6.12 Bitcoin being released every 10 minutes. In 4 years... Actually, it's less than 6 months from now. There's another halvening. So that means there's only 3.12 being released. Until you get exponentially to like 0.00001... every 10 minutes, and then 4 years, 0.00000.5.
And that's how this guy that designed it wrote it.
They want it, he wrote, that's just one of the rules, and it just gets issued out until the very last 21.
And what's the significance of writing it this way? Like, why couldn't he have just released them all at once?
Because I think you like, for monetary policy, if you just all release it at once, there's no incentive for the miner network to people to start joining it and to extract value from it. So
so the miner network is basically to so if I send Bitcoin from me to you, that transaction needs to get verified, and that gets verified by a computer, and that computer gets rewarded by some of that Bitcoin that gets released.
Yes, everything.
So it doesn't get. I used to think it got taken from a percentage of the Bitcoin I sent you.
No, never. So there's a fee. So if I want to send Bitcoin to you to use the network, there's a fee. So it's at 0.01 sat a kilobyte, whatever. So if you do a super complicated transaction, it costs more. But if I send one Bitcoin from me to you right now, it costs about 10 cents. Doesn't matter the value of it.
And where does that 10 cents go?
That goes to the miners as a reward as well.
Okay, so the miner get two rewards. They get rewarded from
the block subsidy, and then also
block subsidy is what?
So that's like for me sending you Bitcoin, there's a little fee on it. So subsidies, so they get all the fees, plus they get the blocks rewarded from the Bitcoin network. That hasn't incentivize them.
The stuff that hasn't been released yet.
Yeah, to incentivize them to be like, oh, we need to use the most energy, the most secure. And so it's 6.
So in 200 years, once it's all released, how then miners will only get paid on fees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that we're just that'd be way down the road. People are like, that might be a problem on the road too. That's a whole other discussion we can go down to. That back in the day, that was a big thing. It was like, oh, don't use Bitcoin. It's
okay. So I still want to stay on the topic of what Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
Because I know there's 1,000 rabbit trails we can go down here. So. Me and Mark talked about this beforehand that I'm going to try to keep him on track. So
because I'm bad with that.
So if you think I'm being a dick, I'm not.
No, I can go down something and it'll be an hour later on a topic and
okay.
It's not.
Okay, so we know it's peer-to-peer electronic money. There's 21 million of them.
Yeah.
There's about 2 million left, and that
mined.
they get released. How often?
So every 10 minutes on average. So it's a bunch of rules. So it's like, oh, we want transactions to confirm every 10 minutes on average. So this is all where we're getting the miners. If more people are mining for it, the quicker it comes. So there's a difficulty adjustment every 2 weeks to keep it at about 10 minutes. So why Bitcoin's different is the supply and demand. Even if the price went to $1 million right now of Bitcoin, like $1 million Canadian per one Bitcoin, the supply wouldn't matter. If it was anything else, it would matter because let's say gold. If gold went to $1 million right now, everybody in the world would be mining it. Everybody's jewelry would be coming off the shelves, melting it down to bars, and the price would tank because there'd also be way more supply. Bitcoin doesn't have that. This is the first asset in the world where the supply and the demand is completely different.
So that's one thing I understand. So that's the one big thing that makes Bitcoin something that we should consider is because there's a finite amount. Yes. You can't make more of it.
And you can say about everything. Like the most, on Earth, what is the most finite thing? It's our time. And second is Bitcoin because you cannot change it. And
okay, so it's not it's basically the opposite of the bead system. There is you can't go make more beads or you can't make more gold or print more money. Okay, understood. So and how does it work? So it's this open online ledger or something like that. There's blockchains. I'm like, what the heck is this? So really break it down simply.
So simply just what if somebody didn't know anything about Bitcoin, you can just download a Bitcoin wallet on your phone, so you have the wallet. And then you could be like, okay, now I have a wallet that's a place that's like a Bitcoin software.
So that in the past you've told me that's compared to an email address.
Yeah, it's like an email address for you. It's it's And then there'll be 12 words on there. So that's your email, password, and your address together. So it's just 12 words, and that's you take those 12
Okay, so
words.
what do you mean together? Don't you get like a long number? That's your email address, basically.
Yeah, but so the Bitcoin, how it works, those 12 words is all that everything together. It's your password and your email address together. So it's like people get kind of confused about that. So you take those 12 words, you can.
So why is it that? How does that make sense? Because then I would know your password.
No, yeah. So that's why
Because I sent you Bitcoin the other day.
that's just a string of numbers, like a Bitcoin address.
Okay.
That's like your email address. So I'm talking about your keys to your Bitcoin. It's like your password to your Bitcoin is 12 words usually, or sometimes 24.
Understood. Okay, so you have a Bitcoin address and you have a Bitcoin password.
Yeah.
And the Bitcoin address can be compared to an email
address.
And the password can be recorded to like a password.
Your password to the email. But the thing is, the Bitcoin password is because you can make multiple addresses, like your email address, for the same account. I mean, we can really go into this too as it can get deep. But just to sum it up, you have 12 words or 24. They hold your Bitcoin. So what you need those 12 words to send Bitcoin, and you don't need them to receive. So
those 12 words are not ones that you decide. Those are
they're just random.
They're random created for each specific address.
Well, you can actually create them yourself. It's just you shouldn't, because then they're not random. You want to use a proper Bitcoin wallet that randomly does it, because if you think you're random, your people are never random, right? So
and how does the system know, like how many Bitcoin wallets addresses can be made?
Well, infinity. It's just a string of numbers times it's 256 hash. Like nobody can fathom what 256 hash is. It's
but before we get there, so the guy that wrote the white paper, he said, okay, I want to have it in a way where it's this. There's 21 million of these Bitcoin out there that can be. You can get a quarter of a Bitcoin or a tenth of a Bitcoin, however much you want, and to get one of these, so he puts it out there, and people start basically using it as a monetary form because they believe it. They like the finiteness of it. They like it that it's peer to peer. And how does it get verified? Like how do we know it's secure? How does that whole thing work?
It's well, I mean, this like we're kind of jumping a pretty wide net here. So we can just how is it secure? Is like 256 hash. It's the same hashing and like.
What's hashing?
So it's cryptographic hashing. Like this is like, if we really get into it, it's super complicated. So it's pretty much you're using numbers.
Explain it to my 5-year-old.
Yeah. So hashing is like it's pretty hard. It's using a bunch of random numbers. That's like, let's say you write a bunch of numbers down. That's like you literally wrap around the earth times a bunch of numbers. And it hashing is like you send a message from me, so I can cryptographically hash something and send it to you. If you can sign it with your key, I know that number matches that number, that times whatever number, and it equals. It's so large that like it's really hard to explain this to anybody. I think that's something that people don't even know about. It's just think of it as a key and a message. It's like explaining the security to websites to somebody who doesn't know. They use the same stuff. It's 256 hash. You're just using like super sophisticated math to say I have a message and it's signed by this, and then I get the key and I read it and I go that they match up. That means you sent it and nobody else can.
You physically check it, or
no? It just does it for you.
The computer, the system, how Bitcoin is designed is that the computers check it. So everyone has, let's say there's 7 billion people in the world. People that have Bitcoin. Basically, the computing power is all the computers combined.
Yeah, so it's just all like Bitcoin is just math. It's just a bunch of large numbers, and they're so large that like there's no possibility of somebody guessing it. So if you have like your Bitcoin key, there's no possibility of somebody guessing it. Like it's like the stars in the universe times the stars in the universe. It's such a big number that people can't even fathom. So when it matches up, the software just recognizes that. And for somebody to say, oh, it's hackable,
But how does the software like the software on my Mac computer is like Mac iOS, whatever. Like it's like downloaded on my computer, and like if I that's how I can use it. Where is Bitcoin?
So the application is you download a Bitcoin wallet on your phone, on your computer, or hardware wallets we call cold wallets. So that's your application. Download it. That application just holds your password. So technically, Bitcoin only moves on the ledger that everybody sees. So it's like a ledger right here. boom, 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 boom. It's in the middle, and everybody has access to it and confirms to it.
So it's basically a big, huge town square, virtual town square.
Everybody's looking at like a giant Excel sheet, and it says Mark sent 1 Bitcoin to you. It gets updated and stamped, and it's always got to equal the issuance of the supply, and it's all going to add up to 21 million forever.
Okay, right? So when back in 2009 when this started, this guy who started it, how could he not own 2 million Bitcoin?
So you needed to mine it. So you needed to put the energy to mine it.
So how many were released?
50 at a time. So every 10 minutes it was 50 Bitcoin.
So okay, but how much was the supply?
0. There was no supply. There was no Bitcoins in existence, but 21 million were able to mine. So the miners back then were mining 50 every 10 minutes. And then it was,
and because there was no value attached to it, or very low, a couple cents.
Yeah, there was nothing. Then
they got paid basically accordingly.
Well, back in the day, it started, it was worthless until somebody decided, hey, I'm going to exchange these Bitcoins for a pizza, 10,000 Bitcoins for a pizza.
Yeah,
which is like, I don't know, a couple $1 billion. It's ridiculous. So like, then it kind of started, people like, oh, I want to buy it, and market started. So like, oh, and then I think it was like 100 Bitcoin for 3 cents was like the first ones, and then exchanges came up to like, hey. Well, the more people join this network, so Bitcoin is not only just like a software, it's a network. Just like our computers are a network. If you have your own computer by itself, it's worthless. So you need the whole internet around to send it to each other as well. So Bitcoin is not just like, so that's why
So I mean, I've heard it argued before that like, oh, it's not secure. What is it? What is the value? The value is whatever
the market says it is.
The market says it is, just like real money.
So then why does it have value? So we can get this in a bit too. Is like, what are the properties of Bitcoin and why people think it has value more than what it is? And that's why Bitcoin's at almost $50,000 Canadian right now. It's like some people are valuing it at $50,000 Canadian for a reason. And what is that reason? So like, let's go back to like, what is Bitcoin too? So like, you have a wallet now. You have your 12 words or 24 words. Those are your access to that Bitcoin. You need to write them down and somewhere safe, because if you lose those 12 words and somebody sends you Bitcoin and you don't have the 12 words anymore, like your phone will just keep them in it, or your computer. But like you also, let's say you lose your phone and you don't have them written down to open a new wallet and to get access to that Bitcoin, just like your access to your email, you need to write the password down. So let's just like be clear on it. If it's not your keys, it's not your Bitcoin. So if you don't,
so that's what the story of that one guy that like he found out that he had Bitcoin. He had bought Bitcoin one day.
Yeah, he was mining it in his computer.
Mining it, and he threw his computer away.
Or his mom did, actually. I think it was a story. So and then he had, I think it was like 100,000 Bitcoin on it. So it's worth, I don't know, something like $2 billion. So
and because how the system is designed is like that's not hackable. Like that's
it's not. Yeah.
If he doesn't find his computer
it's
again,
gone forever.
It's gone forever.
So all he's trying to do is find that computer and look for those 12 words. Yeah. That's literally it. They're just looking for a string of numbers, which is 12 words. That's all they're looking for. So
and there's no computer in the world that could figure that out.
No, it's 256 hash. Like if there's this good YouTube video on like how 256 hash works, it's like an older looking video. Like people should watch that to understand. Like
okay, so specifically the 256 hash. If you YouTube that, you'll be able to find a good video.
Yeah, just like what is 256 hash? Because the thing is too. So even if we get like super crazy quantum computers for 256 hash, we can just update the Bitcoin network and use 211, the next one up. Like it's not even something that's a big issue. You would just have to re-update your wallet, and then they would use a different hash algorithm that's even larger than the current one. So that's like, but when people say it's hackable, it's not. I think a lot of people get in, oh, Bitcoin was stolen or something. The Bitcoin network never has ever been hacked because it's so mathematically impossible. However, people's passwords have. So there's exchanges like Quadriga in Canada that went down and people lost their Bitcoin on it. Well, somebody was holding their Bitcoin for them, and those.
Okay, so they use their exchange like a bank again.
Yes.
Instead of holding it themselves.
Yeah, which is not the point of Bitcoin. So the exchanges you can hold just like a bank account. The bank owners left the vault keys out, and somebody found the vault keys. So a lot of times that Bitcoin, they're like, "Oh, Bitcoin got hacked." Is not hacking. It's somebody else left their password somewhere, and somebody else found the password. And then once you have the password, you can punch it in any Bitcoin wallet and you can move it to your own wallet.
So let me try to recap here. So you have an open ledger, which is basically just like a big public thing where you can see exactly what Bitcoin is being sent from what address to what address.
Yeah.
Those get verified by other computers.
By miners,
and that's how they get paid. And one of the ways to buy and exchange Bitcoin is people are setting up an exchange. So rather than sending a check to Japan like you used to, you now can go to Quadriga or Binance.
But Binance,
or
ShakePay
different ones,
Canada,
and you can
Coinbase.
basically trade Bitcoin on those websites, but they have to upload it to the ledger again for that to work. But they get a fee somehow, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So they just have their own wallet. So you're just holding their Bitcoin on behalf of them. So if you buy Bitcoin and they're like, oh, I want to buy 1 Bitcoin on ShakePay. And it says, my ShakePay account, I have 1 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
ShakePay is just holding that Bitcoin for you on their wallet.
Okay, but how come I have it? How come I have my 16 numbers on ShakePay?
So ShakePay is holding it for you. You can send that Bitcoin off ShakePay to yourself on your own phone or wallet, which you should do. So it's like I said before.
And how does an exchange make money?
So exchange usually buys or sell it at different prices than what it's worth. So it's like you want to buy Bitcoin at $50,000, you can buy it from ShakePay for $50,100.
Okay.
And you can sell it for $49,900. So it's like a $200 spread. That's how most exchanges make money. Or it's fee based, where it's like if you buy and sell, it's going to cost you a percentage of what your thing is.
Understood. Okay. So you're saying how in the past when there's stories online of people getting hacked and stuff like that, it's not Bitcoin not getting hacked. It's that these exchanges aren't secure.
Yeah.
And people are leaving their passwords.
Yeah, they're just doing malpractices, or like Quadriga, it was the owner that took it. He just was like, that's my Bitcoin, I'm leave. Or like FTX that collapsed, he took the Bitcoin and sold it. People had Bitcoin on the exchange. He took it and sold it. And then of course, when people wanted their Bitcoin back, there was no Bitcoin, and you can't create Bitcoin again, even as much as you want to, lie about it or deceit about it.
Yeah.
If you send 1 Bitcoin, I want Bitcoin back, you can't just make more of it. So the exchange collapsed because they were supposed to have, I don't know, something like 30 billion Bitcoin or something crazy, and they didn't have any. They sold it. So all those people who had Bitcoin on the exchange, somebody else sold it from them. That's not their Bitcoin anymore. It's gone.
Yeah.
It got sold.
And so that means that you can hold Bitcoin. If you have a Bitcoin address where people send money to, and if you have those 12 words memorized, let's say, you don't need to physically have it on a hardware piece anywhere, right?
You can. This is the crazy thing about Bitcoin. You can literally go anywhere in the world and memorize those 12 words, and you have your bank account in your head. Think how crazy that is. You can just go anywhere, and you have access to your bank account.
Some people still have it on a USB drive on their safe?
So it's maybe if you forget it, that's a problem, because if you forget those 12 words, it's gone. So you should probably not do that.
Okay, so basically what you have in your safe when you have a cold wallet is 12 words.
12 words. That's it. Literally just a string of your hash 256. It's your key to say that you can access this Bitcoin and send it.
So does that mean then if I have a Bitcoin address and you want to send me Bitcoin, I don't need to do anything?
You don't need to do anything. If you send me that Bitcoin, that's an address to your 12 words. That's your email address you sent to me. I can send Bitcoin to it whenever, however, doesn't matter. You don't even need to be around. You could be, long gone, or send it to somebody else.
So this guy that has his 100,000 Bitcoin in the bottom of a landfill somewhere on a computer, I could technically still send
him Bitcoin.
I could send him Bitcoin.
And it's just going to continue to be lost because nobody has access to that Bitcoin.
Okay.
So Satoshi Nakamoto has, I don't know, I forget how much, but it's close to 1 million Bitcoin, and people send Bitcoin to it all the time, but we don't know where he is or what. It's it's funny. It's kind of like it's like throwing Bitcoin away. Or there's been addresses that people are like, oh, this is like a donation address, and the computer created it with no 12 words, and people send money to it just as a joke. Okay, back in the day it was like, oh, I'll send $30 worth, so it's 30 Bitcoins. But now that address has a serious amount of money in it, and nobody has access to it.
So basically, the amount of you said there's 21 million never can be more created.
But the piece of it.
But that amount is actually going down every day.
Yeah, because if people either lose Bitcoin or something, it's technically unavailable. So they actually think there's a couple million Bitcoin that have never moved, that are probably lost. People lost the passwords to it that will never be recovered. So it's actually the scarcity of Bitcoin is always going down because people lose it.
So now I sort of understand Bitcoin more and what it does and how it's different than the other coins out there, which are run like a company.
Yeah,
this is not. There's no building for Bitcoin. There's no guy that can change the rules, something else like that. But Ethereum and
it's owned by one guy. They can change it. They have 70% of the supply. We don't even know the supply. Nobody knows the supply of Ethereum, which is kind of a problem because they can just print more. You don't know. So stuff
So
like that. Yeah.
so the problems with those coins is the same thing that with current monetary.
Yeah,
supply.
well, it's the same monetary system as what we have now. Or like,
Okay, so you see there's a big difference between Bitcoin and all
crypto.
the current,
Everything else you should disregard if you should like
everything. There's nothing good.
There's nothing at this point.
But what about like, I know I've heard crypto being used for like contracts, or like I've seen guy open their front door with crypto, like on their like, isn't the crypto as a technology something that's
Okay, I think crypto is just cryptographically signed, means that you can create whatever you want, but you don't need a coin or value behind it for something to open your door. You can just open the new apps or use 256 hash too. You know, like you have what's it called, iDoor or whatever the new ones are. Why do we need a coin behind that? Right? Like, why doesn't there be value behind that? It just works and you go.
okay? But
right?
but you could write like a contract on the blockchain, and then it can't be basically changed anymore.
If you did
right?
it on Bitcoin, it can't be changed. But like other coins, they're like companies or people involved where you can threaten somebody and they can just change the code. Then that happens. You would never know. So that's the problem. They're not decentralized. They're not anonymous. They're not like
So last year when the Freedom Convoy happened and the Canadian government seized a whole bunch of bank accounts,
Yeah.
they couldn't seize Bitcoin bank
Yeah,
accounts.
so they got sent Bitcoin. Like I participated as well. A bunch of other guys from Alberta. We kind of set it up and stuff like that. So they got handed Bitcoin like through the passwords. So they were auto-created wallets for them to sing. That's the only money they ever got. So I don't know what it was. It was like $10,000 to $15,000 a person. So I think it raised something crazy, like 10 Bitcoins. People raised around from all over the world. We don't even know where because it's anonymous. So it was like 10 Bitcoins. It got divided out and given to it. That's the only money they ever got, and the police could not confiscate it. However, they found out the one person who's in charge of it, and he had some Bitcoin left that he didn't hand out, and they took control of that because he had the keys for it still. So that's different. So Bitcoin is completely open, and it's actually really good for law enforcement because it's an open ledger, like I said before, Excel sheet. So I send money from you to you, and I know both addresses. I can see who sent to who sent. So it's completely open. So people are like, oh, it's like, it's black market.
Yeah. So a lot of people say, it's like black market. They use it to evade taxes and stuff like that.
It's the dumbest thing.
Seems shady.
So if you actually want to let's say you want to get sent money somewhere, it's an open ledger. It's the dumbest thing you can do for black market. Like I think it's 0.001% of black activities on Bitcoin, because if you know the address that's sending to it and who owns it and where it's going, it's completely open. It's like if you.
So but that's if you know the 24.
Yeah.
So like if I'm like a bad dude in Canada and I want to send money to Mexico, couldn't you just buy a whole bunch of Bitcoin and then just ship it over to Mexico and no one would ever know where it went to, or vice versa?
So like you have to go to an entity. So like you mean like send it to the cartel?
Yeah, or something like that.
You would see that, but if they want to go back to fiat money, they have to go sell it somewhere.
Okay.
So if you want to offload, let's say $100 million worth of Bitcoin, there's going to be like you're not going to find somebody random to take $100,000 or $100 million worth of Bitcoin.
So they would have to keep using it.
They either keep using it or they'd have to send it to somewhere like an exchange. And the exchange is like, where'd you get this money? Or like red flag. And let's say it's a bad dude. They'd be like, okay, this has nothing to do with the Bitcoin network. This is just going, we have laws now in place where I think it's more than $10,000. It's all recorded and sent and recorded. So if you send over $10,000, it's automatically put on a list and everything. So
putting on what list? We talk.
So like if I send $10,000 to somebody else, it's automatically recorded and put on a list, and it gets going through. So if anything suspicious pops
like
up,
the government,
does. It's all banking requirements, and I think they even dropped it now. I don't know which. It's whatever.
But regardless of that, it's on the public ledger.
It's on the public ledger. So if you know the entity that's receiving it and they're trying to sell it, the bank's going to go, okay, where does money come from? And there's a red flag, and it's going to get reported to the police. It's going to be added to it. So they're going to find out real quickly. So if I was a robber, let's say selling like drugs out here, and the police are following me and they see that I'm like, people are sending me Bitcoin, all you have to do is go to the one person that bought drugs off me and see what address to send to it, and then now I know what my wallet is. And they can go, okay, the exchange, like this wallet, this exchange, like you can just track it down and know exactly what the address he uses. Like, so black market activity is like one of the dumbest things to do on Bitcoin.
But maybe it used to be used more?
Yeah, because nobody knew about it. So yeah, back in the day, there was called the Silk Road. So the whole reason the Silk Road got shut down is pretty much like a black market website where you could go to and you could buy anything you wanted, drugs, guns, with Bitcoin. Well, the reason it got shut down is because Bitcoin is just an open network, and they could see exactly where it went and who had it. Like, so then everybody went to jail who was legal. Stuff in other countries that we don't have agreements with, obviously their governments dealt with it, but it got shut down pretty quickly because you could see exactly who and where it went. So it's public.
Okay. I want to pause this podcast for 1 second, invite you into my kitchen, and tell you about a product that I use every single morning. So every morning I come here and I grab some of this Be Well Super Greens from Arbonne. And I add a small pack here of Skin Elixir. It's a collagen builder. And I add a pack of Gut Health, all from Arbonne. I add a banana and some Arbonne protein powder as well. I've been doing that for about a year, and it's made a big difference in how I feel every day. So a friend of mine was selling it. I didn't really believe in it, but I thought I'd give it a shot. And so I tried it for about a couple months, and I started seeing results pretty quickly in how I felt, lost some weight. And the biggest change was my palate changed. So a lot of the foods like pastas and breads that I was enjoying, I naturally wasn't going to anymore. And I was just going to healthier foods. So I attribute that to this. My wife didn't believe me, and then she started trying it and seeing the same changes. My son as well, my 3-year-old son, takes this, the green stuff every morning, and he's picking out the candy from his Lucky Charms now. It's a great product. If you want to try it, link in the description of this video, and there's a Gut Glow convenience pack that you can get with these products combined, so you can try it as well. If you try it for a couple months, I guarantee you that you'll likely see results, and it helps to show it as well if you lose the link, which would be awesome. Create more content for you guys. So anyways, if you want to try it out, you know where to find it. Back to the show.
And so are you suggesting that Bitcoin is used to replace the Canadian dollar or the American dollar, or what is the purpose? Okay, so I understand it's a better monetary system, but like is it useful for day-to-day stuff?
Yeah, I think we should go back and say, okay, what are the properties of Bitcoin?
Okay, let's talk about that.
Why does Bitcoin even have value?
Let's start with decentralized.
Yeah. So like we were talking before, Bitcoin is decentralized. So like when you're part of the network, just like you are part of like Facebook, you're not. It's a social network. It's a money network. So you're peer to peer. So everybody's running the Bitcoin wallets and the nodes and the miners are all together. Like you can send it to anybody, to anyone between, just like the internet. So that means that like if you take one person away, it still runs. You take 90% of the people away, it still runs. Like there's it's there and it's decentralized. It's mean there's no central entity. We all, like a bank account or bank, we all don't go through a bank. It just literally goes between me and you and everybody else that participates. So it's decentralized. So the reason like Bitcoin has monetary value is like certain things like scarcity. There's only 21 million. It's divisible. So those 21 million coins, like a lot of people are like, oh, I don't have $50,000 to buy Bitcoin. You don't. You could buy. So there's called Satoshis. It's 100,000th of Bitcoin. So one Bitcoin can get divided into 100,000 pieces. And it's technically math. You can actually divide even more. But right now it's at 100,000. It's called a Satoshi. So you can buy 100th of a cent. You can buy 1 cent, which I think is about 500 sats right now, which is like 0.0005 of a Bitcoin. You can buy tiny fractions of it. And it's just whatever in your wallet will just tell you the Canadian value. So divisible. Recognizable. Okay, Bitcoin is getting very recognized now. It's like in the U.S. elections, like candidates are bringing it up regularly now. It's in Canadian government. Yesterday, one of the liberal ministers brought it up and was like Satoshi when he released the paper. It's called Satoshi Day. It's on October. It's on Halloween. So like he went in there and said, hey, thank you for Satoshi. And he did it in front of the parliament, in front of everybody. Like so
a liberal MP did.
Yeah, a liberal MP. It's really amazing. Like because obviously Pierre brings it up and he's a Bitcoiner as well.
Pierre is the conservative leader.
Yeah, Canadian conservative candidate. Yeah. And for the next prime minister. So he's been on a lot of Bitcoin podcasts as well. And because the same thing, he's like, we have a money problem. We need to fix it. And so another thing too is,
and the money problem he says is, hey guys, like
inflation.
We're just printing more of the stuff, and everyone's value is going down, and pretty soon. And so when we see inflation going up, so they increase interest rates just quickly. Like, doesn't that fix the problem?
Well, not really, because the people that have the most debt, which is the Canadian government, means they have to pay more on their debt, which means they have to print more money. So this is a whole different cycle people aren't talking about. Interest rates are actually bad because the higher they raise it, the more interest the government pays on their debt, the more they have to print to inflate. So
or raise taxes.
Or raise taxes, right? So we're in a whole different cycle that people are not prepared for either, because they're like, oh, we're just going to raise it. People are going to stop lending money because we'll get this in a bit later, but like the reason interest rates bring money printing down is because fractional reserve lending, people borrow less, which creates less money, which inflation slows down. But that's a whole different issue. We'll go back to the properties of Bitcoin.
It's a bearer asset.
So bearer asset, it's like you hold the keys to your Bitcoin, nobody else does. So you actually can hold down an asset that nobody has access to it. So you're responsible for it. Nobody can take it from you. And that's like, we'll go into the next one is anti-seizure as well. Another property of Bitcoin is like, You're holding that asset. I can send it from me to you, between me and you, and nobody else. Like, there's no intermediaries. There's no banks to tell you no. There's no government to tell you no.
Which is actually a big thing, because I remember working at MDT. We would have customers from all over the world, and like you'd have a customer in Asia, and he would need to send money from there to a bank in Europe, to a bank in New York, from a bank to a bank in Seattle.
And then you have to prove funds, and it would like even sometimes
big fees
wire
in between.
transfers as well take multiple days, and they get stuck, and you have to be like, okay, proof of funds and where they come from, what are they for. Bitcoin, they post an address. Like, I used to run a little company, and I'd order stuff off of out of China. I'd send them Bitcoin. Literally in 10 minutes, I can confirm they have money. If I had sent it to normal banking, it would take weeks, if not months.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would just be gone, and you're still dealing with it months later.
So seizure resistant.
So just like the government sees people's bank accounts, or like with the truckers,
Yeah.
Bitcoin, you hold the asset, and so like you are responsible for it. If it's like a bank, the government can go to the bank and say, take that person's money, or like whatever they want to seize it. They say, let's say you're a bad guy and they want to seize it. Like, it's unlawful, whatever goes to laws. They can tell the bank, and the bank will take it for you. Bitcoin, you hold the keys. It's like holding a bar of gold. The government just can't, unless they go to your house and find it, they can't take it. Like, same with the passwords. If you memorize those passwords, there's no way anybody can take that money from you.
You could waterboard you.
You could waterboard it, but if you don't let go of that money, if you don't tell them what the password is, then
it's okay. Yeah.
So that's like a big thing too. Now people are realizing, like, hey, I need to hold something that I can go pay my employees if something goes bad. That I don't need the government permission. I don't need permission from anybody. It's
actually it's very capitalist in its design.
It is. It's just equal. It's market value to supply. Like it's
so the founding fathers, for example, of America, like for the people by the people.
Yeah,
they would be. This is perfectly in line with that type of thinking.
Absolutely. And that's why a lot of like libertarians are really big into Bitcoin, the first kind of people, because they're like, no, this is true capitalism. If the value is not there, you can't just print value out of nothing. You need to provide value for money.
So I can't help but think this must scare the crap out of government.
Oh, it should. Like, there has been, like, look at China. They scared shitless for it for, like, they try to ban it every couple of years. It was China bans Bitcoin. Like, that's a thing that comes out and people send it to me. And they're like, oh, China banned Bitcoin. They've been doing it every year. They've never succeeded because it's just a string of numbers. How do you got to ban free speech? If you've verbally told me a bunch of numbers and letters, like a Bitcoin address, there's nothing the government can do. Chinese government.
So you can't ban it.
No, you cannot ban. You can ban the on and off ramps. So, like, let's say they've banned exchanges. They're like, you can't sell Bitcoin. But if you're a miner or anybody else, or people have Bitcoin and you're using Bitcoin, there's nothing they can do to stop it, because it's literally free speech. It's just a string of numbers. And if you send that to me, there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. So it's also like Bitcoin is also for enemies. Like, it's completely capitalist money, because if my enemy has Bitcoin and I'm like, oh, I do not like it that North Korea has Bitcoin, it's like, well, it's completely capitalist. If they want to use it, there's nothing I can do to stop it, because it goes both ways. They start seizing it, and it's a disadvantage for one government. Well, guess what? They're going to do that real quickly. But when it's a level playing field for all, Bitcoin's for everybody. And that's like a big thing too. Another property of it is like, it's like you could be a nobody and have a Bitcoin address, and it doesn't matter. You could be a Christian in the middle of China, and you can have a Bitcoin address, and they could never know, and they can never stop it. So it's a really easy way to do it.
Okay, scalable.
So Bitcoin is like also.
You want to take a drink of water?
Yeah. I can ramble forever.
I don't know if you guys can tell, but Mark's passionate about this stuff.
Yeah, like I've been in it for a while, and like the rabbit, like I've been down it. I've made a lot of hard decisions, but I love talking about it because like it affects everybody, and you're seeing it nowadays as well. Like everybody's like, I'm not making enough money to make ends meet. Both families, both people are working. Nobody's getting anywhere, and they're now going, what is going on? And they're getting angry, and it's causing a lot of problems, relationship problem. Like money is everything, and people don't realize it. If you're spending all your time to accrue value, and you're putting that value in fiat money, Canadian money, and it's getting debased and inflated away, and you're losing it, you're not getting anywhere, you don't know why, that's a big problem. And it's theft. It's straight up theft, and nobody wants to talk about it. You are, I call it like time theft. You're stealing people's time, and that's the worst kind of theft. So you're slave laborers to the Canadian government, use Canadian dollars, and you have no idea. You're fiat slaves. But let's go back to the properties. Like that's a whole other thing to go down.
So scalable.
So scalable. So Bitcoin is actually just like a network on top of it. So it's like a whole whack of things that well. So like so little b is Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin. The big B is a network. So scalable. Bitcoin can be divided right now into 100,000 pieces, just one Bitcoin, and you can stream money to anybody anywhere. It's also stuff can get added on top of it. So it's like the Lightning Network that can get added on top of it. And it's like software on top of the Bitcoin network. So there's liquid network. There's so many different things that are being added now. I can't even keep up track now because it's crazy. Like the different conferences that people talk about it.
What do you mean stuff gets added on
So,
top
like,
of Bitcoin?
you can-
You give me an example.
So like different kinds of wallets, different kinds of use cases. So like, let's say like the Lightning Network. So when you send Bitcoin from me to you, it takes 10 minutes to confirm. So if you don't want to sit around for 10 minutes, you're just like, whatever. Or if you send it and it's like 5 minutes, you're like, yeah, this takes too long, whatever. So Lightning Network is like a whole protocol built on top of it, which is a different way of like you send money to that address and you can instantly send Bitcoin now and confirm it through a different type of wallet, which is still Bitcoin because it's still the keys of it, but it's instant. And plus you can stream money. So like now you can send 1/100th of a sat every second and work by, let's say, milliseconds. You can
And it's just as secure?
Yeah, it's just as secure. Like it's different. It's just a whole different applications, different apps, but it's just as secure. Like the same thing as secure is like if you lose the passwords for it, then it's gone. Like you also get to keep it like that way. It's secure cryptographically, yes. Can somebody steal your password if you're like, oh, whatever, here's my phone, here's my password, or you drop her phone, then it's it's yourself.
Okay, so and it's last property you have here is trustless.
So you don't need to trust anybody with it. So banking, you need to trust somebody to hold your money for you. You don't need to trust anybody. Same with the government. You don't need to trust that the government's going to be like, oh, we're going to print 30% next year. We're going to change the monetary supply. Like, let's say we get a liberal government and they're like, oh, we're going to do another 30% printing for something that's some crazy like whatever fearmonger they do, whatever psyops they do next, they're going to go, okay, we need another 30% or more money. We need $1 trillion to fund this. You have no say in that. You need to trust your money doesn't get debased. It's trustless. Like, also with a bank account, you don't need to send money through a bank account to somebody else. I send the money to me and you, and I don't need to trust on anybody else to do it for me. So the responsibility is on you. But on the other side of it is, if you send it the wrong, let's say you send Bitcoin to somebody and you send the wrong amount, that's on you as well. It's like you are in charge of your own money, and you like back in the day. So it's a big responsibility as well.
Understood. And so so now let's say everyone in the world is like, okay, we're switching to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Do you have one world currency?
Yeah, you have a one world currency. You have something that's fair and nobody can change it, and it's most likely going to happen.
How would taxes work?
How would taxes work? You would just be denominating yourself in Satoshi. So you give unto Caesar what Caesar's. If you make this much money, and same with a business, you're just going to have an account on a Bitcoin standard, you're going to have to say, I made this much, and whatever the taxes are, you're just going to same thing. Your income,
And what if you don't want? What if you don't want to pay your taxes?
Well, then if you're not paying your taxes, that's on you between the government, and they find out there's consequences. So there's the other part of it is people are like, oh,
so it's actually harder to cheat on your taxes.
Yeah, because it technically is transparent. You're like, oh, I have this ledger in this bank account, and everybody can see it. It's auditable. It's immune. It's audible. Anybody can audit it. The Bitcoin network gets audited every 10 minutes by every computer. So, like your government says, you have a wallet for your company.
So technically, it could be cheated, but just the same way that current monetary system could be cheated.
Yeah, just like you want to pay cash and not say, okay, whatever. It's the same concept.
So you could just have like a second Bitcoin wallet.
Yeah, but that's on
each user.
Yeah, that's on each user. That's nothing to do with the Bitcoin network. That's if you're on a Bitcoin standard and you're using Bitcoin as for invoicing your income, your cash on hand, and like you're paying for your people, paying for your labor, and you minus it, and you're like, okay, I made $100,000 this year. You have to pay taxes on $100,000. That's on you, not it's like somebody creating a company and not paying it either. It'd be the same level, right? Like,
okay, so let's say people are convinced now and say, okay, I want Bitcoin. What do you recommend they do? Like they just go put all their value in Bitcoin, or I can't go to Tim Hortons and buy coffee with Bitcoin. Like what's the I guess the practical things that.
How do you get some?
How do you, not even just how you get some, but once you have some, like what's besides just a store of value like gold in a safe, is it useful beyond that?
Yeah, so like I have been me and my family living off of a Bitcoin standard. So that means everything I own goes into Bitcoin, and whatever, like I take at the end of the day, whatever my mortgage stuff comes out gets minused off it, but everything that's not is in Bitcoin. So I live in Bitcoin standard. So I have a credit card, which I load Bitcoin up on it, and I pay for everything with it. And same thing, I can just send money to my bank account. There's companies out there where you
have a credit card that's a Bitcoin credit card.
Yeah.
So you go to buy a coffee with Bitcoin.
Everything I do is on that card. I literally I put on there, and obviously it's a debit credit, so you have to have the money on there.
So you have to have the Bitcoin on there for it to work,
Yeah.
and it instantly changes it
Whatever
to
the
cash
value is
because
at that time.
Starbucks
Yeah.
isn't getting Bitcoin; they're getting real
they're
cash.
Not. So there's so many companies nowadays that they do the intermediary
Okay, so there's a company out there that's an intermediary.
that's selling the Bitcoin to cash. But there are places that accept straight Bitcoin. So let's also talk about, like, there's a country called El Salvador, and 2 years ago, so we have like the Canadian dollar, and it's legalized by us. That's our currency. Well, they have their peso, and the Bitcoins are second currency. So every store has to accept Bitcoin. So you go to McDonald's, you can pay for a Big Mac meal. You want to go to Starbucks in El Salvador, you can pay for it in Bitcoin on the Lightning Network or just on chain. So this is a whole quick side story. So I have a friend that went to El Salvador, and he's like, Bitcoin's like a QR code. Instead of writing out the numbers, you can scan the QR code for your address. He was at McDonald's in the line. And he's like, okay, I ordered a Big Mac meal through the Lightning Network. He sent a picture of it. I took a picture of it and put it in my wallet and paid for it. It was, I don't know how many thousands of the currency it was, but so it was I forget, it was 5,500 Satoshis. Paid it instantly. It got paid over there. And so I paid for his Big Mac meal in El Salvador with Bitcoin instantly. And McDonald's have no idea who I am, so it's bearer asset. They got paid for it right away. It's not credit. So they got the money right away as well. And Canada might not be there because we're privileged with how our money system is. A lot of places can't have access to a bank account, which we can get in a later different time as well.
So this is actually a big advantage to poor countries as well.
Yes, huge. Like if anything, if I wanted Bitcoin adopted, I would want it adopted in Africa and other places like South America where they have high inflation, which Bitcoin is huge out in all those places because of that reason. And out here, honestly, a lot of us, we don't need it. The appreciation of Bitcoin and how it works. Most people are like, oh, it's cool, but it's not a life-saving thing. Out there, it absolutely is. You can actually hold your own money and the government can't take from you or inflate it away. That's a huge thing that's going to level the playing field for all these people that are oppressed.
Yeah.
And there's so many little things about Bitcoin that are just mind-blowing. You don't think of, you don't even need to be a person to own a Bitcoin wallet. So another little story, I don't know, I've told this a couple of people, but let's say you have a Tesla and it's self-driving. You go send it out, it's got its own Bitcoin wallet, people pay for Bitcoin in it, and the car has...
Let's say an Uber, for example.
Yeah, it's like an Uber. And then you pay for it. The car right away knows when it needs new tires, needs replaced. That car goes around, and that car has its own address and own Bitcoin. But let's say that you no longer, let's say you lost the keys or you passed away. That car is still going to keep on going around because it can hold value and send value, and nobody's in control about it. And also it's going to know, I'm getting busy. I'm going to buy another Tesla. And it's going to buy another Tesla and do the same thing. We're going to have billion-dollar companies that nobody has access to and nobody can control. That's going to happen pretty quick here in the next 10, 20 years. So you don't even need to be human to have a bank account. So that's a whole other thing too that is going to be
right away.
cool.
I can hear someone saying that, but that scares me. I'm out. How is that a good thing? I can understand how it's a good thing, but
it's a good thing too because you're selling your money for value. It's a good thing or bad thing. It's just a company. But how the future is going to change is not the way people think about it is. It's there's going to be companies that nobody has access to, private companies that just do their own thing. They're providing value and people are going to pay for it, whether that's good or wrong. If you don't like the value of it, then don't pay for it. So but is it going to happen? Probably, because you don't need to be a person to open a bank account to hold Bitcoin. You could be anybody, which is also a benefit for a lot of poor countries because they don't have access to a bank account. Bank accounts are a privilege, so they never are able to hold anything.
So okay, so we have a few notes here left, which is why Bitcoin will go up forever in value. Bitcoin is hope, and the morality of money, which is how I want to end. But before we get there, practically, what's if people are listening to this, be like, okay, I understand it now. I want to. Okay, do I go buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin in Canadian dollars? Do I go sell my house? Do I go I know the money goes, the value goes up and down in crazy amounts.
Yeah.
What's?
So because the thing is, Bitcoin is still it's 15 years old. It is volatile. You see the price go way up and down. Absolutely, you should not be putting everything into it. You should be buying $50 and learning about it. You should be learning about it and not. If you can articulate to me the reason why, I'm a whole different story. I have everything in Bitcoin. I sold real estate, put it all in there because I have been around enough to know that if the properties of Bitcoin are better than the properties of real estate, because people hold their value in real estate because that's the only thing that holds value and stays and goes up in value. So people have been doing that, especially in Canada. You look at the real estate. So you should definitely not be doing that. You should try to buy $50. You should be setting up a wallet and learning how Bitcoin works, sending Bitcoin to somebody, deleting your wallet and resetting it up with your words. You should be learning that. When you get more comfortable with that and learn about the properties of it and what it is, or talk to somebody, then you should be like, okay, maybe I should put 1% in. So like of your net worth is a good place to start, because it's something that, like, let's say that it jumps up 50% and drops 75%, or like drops 50%. You're not going to care about it, but you should absolutely have some Bitcoin, because if Bitcoin, like if you've been it long enough, Bitcoin on average has been doubling every year since 15 years ago. So it's been doubling on average.
15 years ago. Yeah. And specifically the reason for that is
the supply and demand.
The supply and demand. There's a finite supply.
Yeah, every 4 years the supply gets cut in half, which is coming up in
the supply being released gets cut in half.
Yeah, the supply getting released. I should clarify that every time because it's easy to mix up. The supply of Bitcoin coming in, just imagine the supply of gold getting mined gets cut in half, and there's nothing any can do about it. So the only thing that can react, obviously, is the price. And that's why the price goes crazy every time, is because you have the same amount of demand, but you have half as much coming in. So the price goes up. So it, on average, has been doubling for the last 15 years. So like, will that happen in the future? We have no idea. But for the last 15 years, it's doubled every year. So like, not exactly every year. It goes like probably every 4 years a cycle. So it goes crazy high because everybody's like, I want Bitcoin. And you hear it in the news, everybody buys it. It goes like, what did it go from? It went from like...
So it's also because of these spike hikes, there's a lot of people going into it for the wrong reasons
as well. So that's why
you would say just because they want to get rich quickly.
Which, if you're buying Bitcoin on the other side of it, you should be buying it and holding it for 4 years. It should not be something that you're trading. Bitcoin is not to trade. Bitcoin is like insurance on our fiat system. Bitcoin is like, you shouldn't be trading your fire insurance on your house.
Bitcoin is like your gold and your safe.
Yes, but you can also use it as day-to-day payments if we were on a gold standard. So there's other things we can do it as well. That's why the properties of Bitcoin are way better than gold and way better than anything else to hold monetary value over time. But I just want to add one quick thing before we can go on that. So Bitcoin now, through gold, you could hold your value over time with gold, because you'd hold it in gold and it wouldn't get debased as quickly. It gets debased at about 2%.
Just watch your mic there.
About 2%. But so Bitcoin, same thing. You can hold Bitcoin over time. Let's say 10 years from now, you're still part of 21 million. You didn't get debased. However, you can send Bitcoin through space now. I can send Bitcoin to anybody in the world at any point. So now there's a new technology that you can send money and value through time and space anywhere, and nobody can stop you.
Time and space? What do you mean space?
Because let's say somebody's in China, is space between us. To send them money, you can't just to get gold to them. Somebody's got to bring it.
Yeah.
Bitcoin network, you're literally just sending Bitcoin from me to you between space and time. If they want to hold it over 100 years, like that's a crazy invention that like just that alone should people go, let's take a second look at Bitcoin. That's a crazy thing. Bitcoin holds your value through space and time.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah.
So why? And so that kind of leads into why Bitcoin will go up forever in value. So supply and demand. We talked about that. Providing value for money.
Yeah. So like real estate is not going to go up forever in fiat terms. So like, because they're always printing more money and they're not printing more real estate, other than they're building on it, but land value they're not making more of. So land value is always going to go up because they're always going to print money, because there's always more currency chasing fewer amount of goods. So that means the prices go up. Same with Bitcoin. The best thing you can hold is Bitcoin, because it's going to go up forever. Because even look at Bitcoin versus housing. They're always making more housing, but they're not making for Bitcoin. So if you bought a house, like I looked at this too, like back in the day, you wanted to buy a house in 2016, it was like 200 Bitcoin to buy a house. If you held it for 4 years, it was 40 Bitcoin. In a year from now, you're probably going to be paying 1 to 2 Bitcoin for a house, because there's always more houses being built. So when you're on a Bitcoin standard, you just got to think, what is...
And also at the same time, the Canadian monetary system, or American, whatever it is causing that price to go
up as well.
And because the number of Bitcoin isn't changing, it's going the other way.
The amount of currency in the system's changing. There's more currency chasing the same amount of goods. So that means like if everybody has Monopoly and everybody has $10 Monopoly board, but somebody's getting handed an extra $100 over here, he's going to be like, I'm going to buy that house because there's more currency, and he's going to inflate in the price. So like,
understood. Yeah, I get it.
So if you're always creating value and exchanging that for Bitcoin, it's always going to go up forever, like in value terms, like because the currency number is never debasing. There's always more supply of like goods coming in for it, and the currency never changes. So like there's now a monetary policy that we know for the next 200 years is going to be exactly the same and consistent. Whereas in the Canadian monetary policy, we're like, are they going to hike again? Are they going to print again? We don't know, right? Like, and it's all like it's so complicated, even with bonds, yields, all the inverse. Like,
so are you saying if everyone was on Bitcoin, the house prices wouldn't skyrocket? Like they would just stay really stable? Like would everything be way more stable in its pricing?
Yeah, it would be way more stable because you would be like, okay, is it valuable for me to exchange my scarce asset for something? It's got to be worth it. And I don't need to rush around anymore to like run into real estate and take massive leverage out and then to buy another thing to get ahead. You're going to be way more stable prices because right now, real estate has a monetary premium on it. So people are holding real estate because that's their money. Mm-hmm. So if you take that away, real estate prices are going to tank versus Bitcoin very hard in the next 10 years because everybody has their monetary premium in real estate. So when that monetary premium comes down and goes into other things that are more valuable because they're like, oh, it's not holding my value anymore, you're going to have a lot more fair value and like stable thing where it's like, I build a house, I sell it, it's going to be more leveled out. You're not going to have crazy like, oh, Canadian housing rose 30% in the last couple of years, right? Like,
and so could you buy a house with Bitcoin and have a mortgage, or how does that like?
So you can't like, yeah, so you can do that. There's already companies that have Bitcoin backed mortgages, but so you can buy and sell in Bitcoin, and you can go on like the MLS in Vancouver. You can actually just go buy a mansion for, I don't know what is it. You can buy like, 200 Bitcoin, you can buy a mansion in BC. Like they're already listed everywhere, so you can physically use your Bitcoin to buy it.
Okay, but I mean more like let's say a house is 20 Bitcoin and I only have 2 Bitcoin. Is it in this system? Can I just never buy that house, or could I borrow 18 Bitcoin?
So you can borrow and lend, but the thing is, you got to realize you got to pay that debt back. So Bitcoin, if you borrow Bitcoin, 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. So if I borrow a Bitcoin from you to buy a house, I need to pay that 1 Bitcoin back.
In Bitcoin, and the value is going.
Yeah. So like there is ones out there that you can do that. When you have a mortgage, everybody loves mortgages in Canada because our inflation rate is higher than our interest rate. So that's called like, I forget what the name for it is. Like if you have $1 million mortgage at 2% interest, but your inflation's at 6%, you're paying 4% of your debt down a year without you doing anything. You cannot do that on a Bitcoin standard. So if I borrow a Bitcoin...
And that's actually a bad thing. I mean, it's good if you're in that situation, but it's bad because...
your money supply is increasing, but it's bad to incentivize taking debt out. Like all my grandparents and everything, a lot of older people have you buy stuff, you pay your debt down, like the Gordon Ramsay stuff, which is absolutely right. We should all be on that path. All kids nowadays is take out debt because everybody who took out debt benefited, but now people are getting way over leveraged. And especially with interest rates going up, there's a lot of bodies around, like people that I know that are floating up going, had to sell farms, had to sell this and that, had to sell their house.
So that whole thing that you hear on, you see it on Instagram Reels and everywhere is like, debt is good, debt is good, debt is good.
Well, it is like from just like a non-Christian moral standpoint, if you want to get ahead, you take out the biggest mortgage you can, because the bigger mortgage you can take, it gets debased as long as your interest rates are low, and it's even the cost of things. So your property value is going to be going up because they're printing money. That means that your debt is getting debased and becoming smaller.
Okay, so that's a perfect segue into the morality of money. So you think that the current system is
immoral.
Is immoral.
Yeah. So when we didn't really break it up. So like when I go to a bank, so there's the government's. First of all, let's just start from what money is. So like the government, they print the money through quantitative easing, through buying back bonds, through the government. They make it confusing and make it look like they're not. But if you look at the M2 money supply, you can see it's a hockey stick. It goes up. So like they're creating more units. Even though not being honest about it, either they're taking out debt, they got to pay that back. That's creating debt. So the government's inflating away. So if they're inflating the currency away, if you're holding, let's say you work 25 years of your life with $100,000, you saved at $200,000, and all of a sudden inflation's at 10% like it was 2 years ago, all of a sudden that, like let's say $100,000 lost $10,000 worth of value, you can buy $10,000 worth less goods and services. So like people got to start thinking in that mindset. It's like 2% is still wrong, but like people didn't really, it's like the pot is warm. And also remind me to bring up CPI, how like that. So that's Canadian Price Index, which they use to price out inflation.
Yeah, you go through these points of the morality of money.
Yeah, so let's just start with that. So money right now, the government does it. It's not gold backed, so there's no backing it. They can just do it, and we don't know. Like we're going to send $100 billion to Ukraine. We're going to send $100 billion to US. We have nothing we can't say about it. So first of all, you have no say in that money printing. It's just done. And there's no votes, there's nothing. It's just whatever they think it is. So it used to be hard back in the day because there was gold standard or there was coins, and you actually physically had to get the coins. Yeah. And you have it goes through all of history. Look at like back in the day, the Lydia currency. You look at the Romans back in the day, they had coins, and they had like you see how coins didn't want to be counterfeited. They had like the faces on it, and then they had the little on the side of the coins. They had little cuts on them. That was from money clipping. So people would shave off chunks of gold to debase the currency. The kings would do that and melt it down. So people would see, oh, this coin's been clipped. So it's called coin clipping. And they would shave off bits of gold or silver and create new coins with it, debasing, making them the people whose money, they thought it was $1, but it wasn't, smaller and smaller and smaller, like 98%, and they would take that 2% and create new coins. That's how inflation was back in the day. It was hard, but so be it. They still did it. And then there was things that came out to be like, you had weights. You would weigh your gold, so you would not, you're cheating. You're like, I want 10 ounces of gold and 10 ounces of gold. You know your weight and measures, and just like in the Bible.
Okay, so I want to read that verse here a second. That kind of ties into this. So Proverbs 16, verse 11, just balance and scales are the Lord's. All the weights in the bag are his works. So it's I like the example there of the money being shaved. So it's just like it's equal to equal. It's fair to fair.
Because our money is supposed to be. So like there's a good book. It's called Thank God for Bitcoin. As a bunch of pastors wrote it. But Bitcoin is equal money. It's fair money. So like you can't cheat on it. There's no way to cheat, because if I give you one Bitcoin, you got to give it back. I can't make it smaller. There's only 20 million. I can't debase it. I can't inflate it away. I can't steal it without you knowing. Whereas inflation, they do all this stuff, the government, and they're taking that value away over time by making your currency smaller, and they're printing more, debasing and inflating your money away.
So they're basically doing what they used to do with the Roman coins and taking shavings off to make more. But they're not doing it that way. They're just doing it by printing more.
Yeah, and without even going to the people. So like, let's go back also like we're just talking large down, and we'll talk what they did in money printing and everything. So they have metrics like CPI. So CPI is a complete it's people are like, oh, inflation is about 2% every year for the last 20 years. That's a complete lie, because like the basket of goods that they use is not anything that we use. Like if you want to live in your mom's basement and all you eat is junk food and watch TV, the CPI is probably 2%. But if you went, let's say that you wanted to buy a house, or you wanted to buy a new car, or college, or healthcare, you're looking at probably on average 8 to 10% a year. So pretty much what the S&P 500 is at, that's what inflation is at. They say if you use real goods that you wanted, that people actually want. On top of that, technology has been bringing inflation down as well, because things get better. Like now iPhones have everything in it. Before it was a printer. You got to get a printer. You needed a camera. It's all in your iPhone.
So technically on a healthy money system, as technology increased, everythyou should have gotten cheaper.
Yes. Yeah.
And not more money, because now it's the other way around.
Incentivizes you to save. And so it's like your time value, if you have a high time preference, you think about saving for a very long time from now, where if you have a short time preference, you're just like, I'm going to blow my money because it's going to be gone anyways. So everybody's morality and everything to think of is misaligned now because of our money. You corrupt the money, you corrupt society. It's been throughout history, everything. Like the Roman Empire fell because of that. But anyways, going back to the money printing, when the government does that, they can just do it without anybody knowing. But so if you're on a hard money supply, you would, like back in the day, if you had a castle and you're like, I want to go attack that castle, you had to go to your people and go, I need the money to go attack and to fund my army. So you would have to actually physically get out there. You would have to get the wishes of your people, and everybody would have to think it's worth it to go. If you didn't think it worth it, it would definitely not be happening, because you need money to pay them. If you don't have money, you have nothing. Well, nowadays, since World War I, especially since the Weimar went off and they started same thing. That was when the first fiat experiments kind of collapsed. It was like Weimar Germany, and how it came out of World War I. None of the world wars would have happened without money printing, because they took the value and they printed it, and they could debase everybody else without them knowing, and they could fund endless wars. So look at the States. You can fund wars and nobody says anything about it, and that's their biggest expense. And there's no accountability. You don't need to vote on it. You don't need anything. It's just, send 100 billion here, 100 billion here. So if you're on a hard money standard, the morality is of it. There's a lot less killing people of you don't even know about stuff going on, because
you just can't. You can't.
You need to go to the people or tax them, raise taxes, or ask for the money from the people. And if it's not worth it, guess what? It's not happening. There's no you going over there, dropping bombs on families, and we don't know what's going on. But it's just no, it's so you're incentivizing people that have money of value to be like, oh, we need to think, and this must be right, and get the people behind it. Okay, somebody's doing something to us. Let's say somebody dropped bombs in Canada. We had to go around and be like, okay, we need to protect ourselves. That would happen. There needs to be the people behind it.
So then everyone would need to send money to the government's address.
Yeah. You would need to just say they would order the gold. Gold standard. It doesn't have to be a Bitcoin standard. Just on a hard money standard, you'd actually need to go with. So if you're using Canadian dollars, you're funding war, even though you don't even realize it, because they're using that inflation to inflate the currency away to pay for it, and other things as well. There's a lot of other things in this government's funding that we don't even know about, and they're just funding it, and that's just part of it.
Yeah. Okay, so you have inflation, money clipping. We talk about that. Fractional reserve lending, stealing from the poor.
Yeah. So fractional reserve lending is like, because government can print money, but when you borrow and lend money, you can create money as well. So banks actually create money. So if I give the bank $100, Canada has zero reserve requirements. The bank can give that $100 and lend it out as well. So technically, there's like, and then like they're supposed to have like 99%, but with COVID, they got it down to zero. Let's say it's still at 99. They can lend out $99. Now there's technically 199 currency units out there with debt.
So for every $100 they get, they can lend it out
to another person, and let's say that person deposits in the bank, can re-lend it out. So fractional reserve banking, which everybody does, that's just how our bonds and everything. It's just debt. They're just rolling over debt because it's just numbers in a currency. So when they're doing that, you're creating money as well. So the whole morality of lending as well is like, so if I take a mortgage out from a bank, I'm technically creating money. So if I'm creating money, and one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not steal, and I'm devaluing the currency because I'm creating money, and the poor people don't have access. Like majority of people can't get mortgages, especially the poor. They're the ones that saving the money. None of us actually use money. We barely have any money in our accounts. We have everything else. We're stealing from the poor. We're debasing the currency as much as the government as well to fund our stuff and to get ahead. Because if we don't,
so you think it's immoral to get a mortgage?
Yeah, unless you get a mortgage from somebody and you pay it back in full. Where a lot of these mortgages never do. They get, as soon as you get a mortgage to the bank, it gets rolled off and sold off to somebody else, and these mortgages never get paid down, and they get relent out and fees on this and that, and that's where you get like mortgage-backed securities and like CDOs and everything on top of that, like the whole.
And that's how that like 2008 the big crash.
Yeah, exactly, because they were leveraged like 1 to 200, and also it was like when you go the other way, because then fractional reserve lending is like everybody has their money in their account, so if we all went to the bank and went to get our money, it's not there, right? They don't have the money, because it's all lent out from this person, this person, this person. If you're on a hard standard, like which a lot of reserves, let's say Bitcoin, not reserves, Bitcoin exchanges have gone down because they've lent out Bitcoin, and somebody's like, oh, I want my Bitcoin back. They didn't have it. Well, guess what? If they don't have it, then they went bankrupt because they try to buy it back or they try to get it back, and there's no money there. You have to pay that back in the same currency, in the same amount, because it's part of that 21 million, and that's what you owe. So like mortgages are absolutely okay if you're lending it out on like the principle of like inflation. If you're lending it out and you got to take it back and you close that mortgage out and you pay it off, and so like if I gave you that currency amount and you paid it off, that's perfectly well. But if I'm borrowing money from you and you're selling that debt to somebody else, and that debt sold to somebody else, and it just literally never gets paid off, and and then it ends up as bonds on the government of Canada's balance sheet because the government's buying the debt, and then that's never getting paid off. That's you're creating currency units because you're creating debt.
Understood. So it's like another way of printing,
money, yeah.
basically okay.
So the government, that's part of it. Is like majority of the printing is from the government, but a lot of it also is from our banks as well.
So I can imagine then, like it's kind of a little bit off topic, but if you have all your money in Bitcoin, you actually are incentivized to spend as little as possible. Absolutely. Because the value is going up, so you become smarter with your money.
Yeah, you become. I have a lot of stories of when I was younger, and like I said, I started buying it, and I had some Bitcoin. I was like, oh, I'll trade it here and there. Or I'll buy like my wife's vehicle. Well, that vehicle is now worth $400,000, depending that, which is definitely not worth that now. But like, I was like, I could have just bought something a little bit less, and then you're incentivized, or like you're
incentivized to save
because your value is going up time. On top of that all, you don't need a second job to worry about keeping up with everything, because you can now, if you work and put your value in time, it saves it over 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, or even 1,000 years if you give it to your kids. And however long your lineage goes, they hold that Bitcoin. That's you're saving that value. What you worked in that time is going to stay the same through time as well. So like you're incentivized to save like that. But
so that kind of ties into inflation time theft. When in the past, I don't know, 50 grand 50 years ago was
a house.
Like several houses.
Yeah.
And now 50 grand is
a car.
Is a small reno.
Yeah. No, yeah. Like the value is decreasing because it's slowly then suddenly, like, right? It starts to kick in when you start. People, like, inflation has been whatever. We've had things in there, but when it gets out of hand, like look at third world countries like Venezuela, like Greece and stuff like that. When all of a sudden you wake up and your currency is devalued by 50%, people are going to go, okay, and if you are holding currency in units, you're going to be going what? So not even that. People already realize that the pot's getting warm, and they've been like, oh, I need to invest in real estate to make money. I need to put it in this. So You have two jobs now. You have your main job, and then you have your second job to worry to put where to put your money to hold value. That's everybody doesn't realize it, but that's what it is. So you're worried about it. And another thing too is if you're not needing to worry about that, and you create value, and you create value for Bitcoin, and you buy it, and it holds its value over time. Well, guess what? Your wife doesn't need to work to have kids. You can buy a decent house. You can live like back in the day off a gold standard, one family income, and you only have to work 60 hours days, or you can work a job that pays a little less, but you're happy with it and you love it, or start your own company. Now everybody's working their max they can. Their mortgages are $3,000, $2,500 plus things. Like they're literally working to the max. Their wife works. They have no kids, no relationship with anything, or even relationship with God. Like they just have no time for anything because it's go, 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 go. I have this debt. I need to pay it off. I need to get ahead. I can't do it. Like they're just.
So because we're creating more debt, we need to work more to pay it off, which creates more.
Yeah, but also with like the government created way too much, and they want to try to stop that. They rose the interest rates, which a lot of people thought would never happen, and then now people over leverage are getting wiped out. That's the whole other side of the greed cycle. Like they're just like, we need to buy as much. We need to do an Airbnb. We need to buy a vacation house. We buy a rental property to keep our value. And they're like, oh, this is working. Let's they're going way over the board and way over leveraged, and now we hit a hiccup, and they're going, oh, things aren't going so good. That's a whole other side of it too. Is like. They should have never been that over leveraged. Or like the people have like millions of dollars worth of mortgages, and they earn like less than $100,000 a month. Like that's a reality for a lot of people. And then their wife has to work. There's no kids relationship. There's fighting over like there's so much incentives. Like money is around everything. Like how many fights in families has been amount of money in the last couple of years? It's been a lot with people.
Yeah.
And like if you could save your value and hold it in something that doesn't get debased, it might be right now. But if you start, maybe in 5 years from now, you're gonna have breathing room to go. Okay, maybe you know what. I don't need to take overtime. I want to spend more time on education, right? Or
I got money changers here.
So that's like another biblical. It's like Jesus, same thing went in the temple and was like the money changers were doing the same thing. They were creating debt. They were changing money, stealing from the poor by like trading it with massive like. So if I'm buying and selling different things, changing money, they would create interest rates. So like it's definitely like what banking is. In fractional reserve banking is like immoral. That's what like Jesus went in the temple and kicked them all out. Was like. We don't want that any of you. That's not what, you're cheating from the poor. You're creating no value. You're just, I forget what it's called, rent seeking. You're just rent seeking, right? You're same thing. You're just changing between each other, making money off stuff. You're providing no value, but charging your fee for it. And that's not right. So that's why I had.
Understood. Okay. So I got a few questions here that people sent in. And I think we touched on a few already, but maybe we can just quickly recap on them. So what good or service does Bitcoin provide humanity that is beneficial and God honoring?
It provides you value, true value. It's like a measuring stick that's true. Like right now, our fiat measuring stick is an elastic. You don't know where things are at. So you can now see what true value something has, and you can't be like cheating something. The measuring stick's this much. It's it's 3 inches. It's 3 Bitcoin. There's no stretching it back and forth and inflating the currency. So it's more Bitcoin is a completely separate way to opt out of our corrupt system and being like, we have something new to use that's honest. And is not immoral. We're not cheating. We're not lying. We're not stealing, and it's true capitalism, right? Like it's the most Christian money there ever has been.
Understood. Okay. One more here. Bitcoin uses a ton of energy, and that's not very good for the environment.
So Bitcoin does use a lot of energy, and it uses energy because the miners that are confirming need to use power to guess a number. So it's like your computer guessing a bunch of numbers. It needs the power and the heat to guess, right? So it uses a lot of energy. Bitcoin uses a lot of energy. But so does everything else. Your dryer, everything else as well. But a lot of things is Bitcoin doesn't use the energy that you think of. It uses stranded energy that's free. So a lot of places, like I know a company, and I deal with some other people at greenhouses that heat greenhouses and other things with stranded natural gas from wells that they flare off. So the natural gas is flared off and it's just burnt into nothing. Well, they can use that natural gas for a generator, and they use that generator to mine Bitcoin because that energy is there. So you're using stranded, because Bitcoin can only, if you want to use electricity to mine Bitcoin, the electricity has to be cheap, because then if you're spending 6 cents a kilowatt hour and you're only creating 6 cents worth of Bitcoin, you're par. And if your electricity goes up to 10 cents, like it's not worth it to mine Bitcoin now. Like it used to be back in the day. I did a little bit. I had some brothers did it. It's not worth it at all unless you have cheap electricity. So the only way to find cheap electricity is like there's a place in Vancouver that uses methane from dumps. So the old methane from dumps that goes up, they use that methane to in generators, same thing as natural gas, and because they have to get rid of that methane anyways, they usually just were venting it but they use that now to run generators to mine Bitcoin. So the energy is cheap. So Bitcoin uses a lot of energy, but it's a lot of stranded energy that nobody has access to. Or like, let's say there's a dam up in like Site C dam up in top. Let's say it gets running. Most places, the generators...
Is that still not running?
What's that? I don't even know, but I'm just saying, let's say it's going to bring a lot of energy on it. So there's, maybe not in Canada here, is like a lot of different places, like by New York and stuff, there's a lot of like decommissioned dams where they still run, but they're running, they don't run them at what they think everybody's going to need at 20% capacity. They run it at 200% capacity, right? So everybody's using the energy up to, like, so they never want to have like a dam that has like 50% because they're going to have blackouts all the time. You want to have the dam to have, let's say everybody's taking electrical heat, everybody has everything on, max power, and then they want that amount to be the top. So they never have brownouts or blackouts. So during the day or any other time, a lot of that energy, what do they do with it? It's wasted. It is literally dumped off. So Bitcoin miners actually stabilize the electrical grid and incentivize more green energy, because now you have a place to store energy technically, because you're storing energy in Bitcoin. That energy, instead of being dumped in the ground and being worthless, is now put into Bitcoin. And now they actually get Bitcoins for it and actually can use that to purchase other things or subsidize the electricity to make it even better, to be like, oh, so Bitcoin only uses cheap electricity or nothing electricity. So, so, and another thing too is like on the energy part of it, like I think it's they say 60 or 70% of Bitcoin is using like green energy already. Like, because if you use expensive electricity, it's not worth it. But on another side of it, not including energy, let's say that you look at all the screens in the world that are playing, or microwaves and dryers that are using, that's not even like a 1/100th of the percent that the Bitcoin network uses. So like do you think it's valuable to put energy for it? If somebody thinks there's value to use energy for it, then it's worth it. That shouldn't really be up to anybody to decide, a government or anything. If you don't think there's value for it, then don't buy for that big TV or that heater for that electricity, right? So like that's also another part of it, is like you might think it's wasting electricity, but like somebody thinks it's valuable, so somebody thinks it's worth it. If you don't think it's worth it, then like people say that dryers use too much things, and the government's going to ban all dryers. You still think it's worth it, and you have one. You're using a ton of energy to dry your clothes every week, right? Like, well, you think it's worth it. That's the energy. That's your responsibility too as well, right? So.
Understood. Very cool. I think this was a super fascinating conversation. We're right at an hour and a half here. Oh. If people want to go learn more about it, like, do you have one or two books you can recommend?
So I had the good one is I don't have it with me. I should have grabbed it. So Thank God for Bitcoin is a book. It's written by a bunch of pastors that put it together. There's also another one as well that's smaller and shorter. There also is like tons of great videos.
What's the one that's smaller and shorter?
I forget to tell at this point. It's written by a pastor in Alberta.
We'll put the links in the description.
Yeah. Those are two great like Christian ones, but like to get like I'll add some books. Just simple. I think it's like The Rabbit Hole to Bitcoin. Just simple, explains everything in short paragraphs. A lot of stuff I went over, like what is money and stuff like that.
But in summary, I guess is this is a fair form of money where the government can't steal it. It holds its value. Yeah. It allows you to work less and spend more time with what's actually valuable to you, and not constantly be chasing. And it can't be stolen. In many ways, it seems like a super good alternative to our current system. Yeah. And just to remind people again, this isn't. The Canadian dollar isn't like the only money we've ever had. We've used all different kinds of money over the years. This is just a better form of exchange.
A better tool.
A better tool.
What is your money? What do you use it? And what your tool. So why don't you use the best tool, or what do you have? Like, you should be learning about it. If you're using
people used to use Roby, and now they use Milwaukee.
Yeah, you're like, oh, why do they make better stuff? Why don't you use it? Save your time. Yeah. But I would just end with saying, like, Bitcoin is hope for people nowadays. Like, it should be, you're now, everybody's like, oh, the world's going to end and stuff like that, like fear monger with everything. Like, well, no, you can now work towards something, and like you adopt a Bitcoin standard or start thinking in those terms, be like, you now want to have tons of kids because you can know that they're going to be provided for in the future. Your value is going to be for them. You don't need, your wife can work and doesn't need to work, stay at home. Like, you start going down that path. You also have more time to do stuff, and like people are happier. Bitcoin is hope for people, like especially not around here, because we already have a lot of things as privileged as the Canadian economy has been, that we've been pretty good. But like other places, like there's some great, I'll put a good video about Africa, Bitcoin adoption in Africa, and you put a link there. It's like, It's like Bitcoin is hope for them, because it literally is changing their lives for the better.
Dictators can't steal it.
Bitcoin is changing the lives for better. And anybody, like, you should have a little bit, because it's going to be the way, because it's all the properties it has and how it works and everything like that is you're just going to, once you start going that rabbit hole, it doesn't end, because we just touched on a few topics in the light and skipped over it, but like we could go into mining for 6 hours. We can go to nodes for 6 hours. Like we could go into different companies, how it works. Like there's so much. And then just like the different, like the Byzantine generals problem, the different things that it solves, like there's so much. Like this is just a topic. Yeah. And if anybody like wants to even give me a call or talk to me, like my phone number is 604-799.
This is going to blow up, right? This is going to have millions of views. Like, are you sure you want to do this?
Sure. Yeah. Like I talk to anybody.
Okay. What's your phone number again?
604-791-7898.
There you go. And you want to give them your Bitcoin address too as a thank you?
No, I can post one on there, but I don't take donations. But if you want to, sure. Like I also have like an Instagram. It's called Bitcoin On Ramp. I was for a bit there going like put lots of stuff on there, and I should probably start going again, because like with the halving coming close by, the price is most likely gonna, like I said,
the halving of the amount being supplied.
The supplied is happening. That means everybody, the demand is the same, but the supply gets the amount being issued, supply gets cut in half. Price is probably going to jump, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have a $300,000 Bitcoin in this pretty soon here.
Yeah,
like in the next couple of years. Like that would not be out of anything unnormally that happened.
Yeah. Awesome. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Great chat, guys. If you have any questions or comments or thoughts, put them in the description or in the comments of the video.
We'll do a follow-up.
Yeah, well, and I'll get Mark to go in there and answer some more questions once this is uploaded. But I learned a bunch more about it. I'm gonna go home buy some Bitcoin. Okay, thanks.
Okay, guys, hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any questions about the topic of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, feel free to send those my way, to me on my social media or on my website, furiouslycurious.co. That's .co. Mark and I are going to likely shoot another episode answering all those questions. We let a bunch of people watch this before we published it, so got quite a few questions from that already. So likely there's going to be more. So send those my way. And also, if you have different ideas on people I could talk to or different topics, we'd love to get that feedback. And as always, please like and the show if you enjoyed it. Share it on your social media or with friends and family. Hopefully we can grow this thing a little bit and also get cool new guests that way. So anyways, that's all for now. More content coming soon, and I'll see you guys later.